Hey, Florian, so great to be back with you. Just a marvelous impact leader, an investor. You've worked across the UN. You created things like the Global Impact Summit within YPO, and you're definitely one of the leaders in the impact investing area as well. And you worked with the United Nations. You've in the midst of publishing books, and I mean, it's just so much that you're doing and have done, and of course, just a marvelous a servant leader as well. There's a few that give more than they take, and you definitely don't take, you give. So we call those servant leaders. You're definitely a global servant leader. So thank you for coming in and sharing your wisdom, experiences, and insights with our audience.
Stephen, it's a pleasure to be with you. And again, I can return that servant leader comment very much also to you. So I think we are kindred spirits here.
So the last time we had an interview is when you were chairing the whole impact program, the Impact Networks Council, and maybe you can talk about what happened while you were chairing and post chairing, and we'll get into more detail on the YPO side, and then we'll get into you personally on your investment journey because that's really expanded considerably. I would say like 10x compared to the last time we talked. So.
Yes, and Stephen, also thank you for that year, for our joint journey here, the collaboration in so many fronts, and all the things you've done to YPO. And again, since then, of course, you know, not only the organization YPO, from a leadership perspective, have embraced certain things on the impact side, yeah, but also we are in a geopolitical turbulent time, yeah, where sometimes people interpret things in a different way, when you want to do something for the humanity or for the planet. But again, I'm very glad to see that the Global Impact Summit, for example, is now continuing. They have the next one coming up in March now in Manaus in the Amazon. Yeah, really in the center. This is beautiful. On that side, also from my side, again, at that time, you remember, Stephen, I was part of we had our impact investing asset manager, Bamboo Capital, which then I exited to Palladium. I stayed there for 2 years to support there on the capital advisory team, and since then basically rolled off. Yeah, and again, I continue my journey to impact lives and share profits. This is just where, for me, what I do is greater than myself. Yeah, it's a calling. It's a little bit also the question I ask many people is, what, other than having a bank account and a family, what's your contribution to the world? Because I think that is what makes us humans special. Yeah, the ability to the empathy. Yeah, it's the essence actually of love for nature, love humanity. And so those are the things. And yes, since then, on my side, I joined a firm and did a management buyout. Yeah, it's called today Human Planet, where we basically work between the for-profit and non-for-profit world, all the shades of gray in between. Because typically you say either you make money or you do good, and there are so many things in between which we're involved in. Yeah, which is really from a purely concessionary side over to commercial side. Yeah, but we've done, for example, refugee impact bonds, the first humanitarian impact bond with the ICRC. Yeah, then also and the space really, the intention is to mobilize capital on the intentionality of capital. What do you invest in is not just a financial return, but actually what does it do? What does it trigger? And then also in my space, of course, it's the additionality of capital, where capital normally would flow differently. Yeah, or not necessarily. That's how you see how you can adjust risk reward returns. Yeah, so that money and investments can take place in different parts of the world, which is very exciting. This is really triggering economic empowerment very much. Yeah, it's not the helping side; it's much more, as you said, the serving side, because you put yourself at risk. Invest in here, and that has been a beautiful journey. And since then, also, of course, you connect to more and more people, which put their heart into their business, which is part of the journey also of myself publishing a book in the same sense. So maybe there's one area, and I mean, this is a sweet spot for you, is of course the whole AI world, with AI coming so disruptive in terms of, the way companies work. Yeah, what does it mean for the labor force? What does it mean for young people coming out of college, out of education to actually find a job? Yeah, that's another component to it. Yeah, besides, of course, whether you want to use AI for good, as you've been doing and initiating very strongly with ITU. But then also for me, there is the component of, as AI is a tool catering to the human, humans are much more following AI and asking AI, where should I go? And so there's a fine line of humans subjugating themselves to the machine rather than knowing what they want and leveraging the machine. Yeah, so this is a little bit also a field I'm quite now looking more in detail.
So let's mine this a little bit. You're the co-founder, managing partner of A Human Planet. It's a platform dedicated to stewarding capital and leadership towards long-term value creation across people, planet, and prosperity. And it's at the intersection of purpose and performance and systems change and supporting the design and scaling of enterprises that generate double financial returns. So you indicated that was an existing platform and you took it over, or you actually no, but you're listed as co-founded, right? And managing partner. So it's really a new one, or was it an existing sort of entity and then you shaped it to what it is today?
That is correct. So the company was called is called KOIS, KOIS, and the founders of KOIS started with impact investing advisory. Then they raised funds, and because of raising funds, they were no longer allowed by the LPs, but investors to do advisory. So the advisory was actually in a downstream, yeah. And then they thought for a third managing partner to come in to take over and reshape and reposition the advisory. Yeah, but they were also open to a spin-off. Yeah. So rather than letting it die, because it would have been easy, it's a consulting business, yeah. You stop and that's it. It's not like you have production or products or no, or investors, which you have to
Right.
cater to over a long period of time. It's just a consulting firm. So I decided to buy this despite of all the changes geopolitically in terms of the USAID crash, humanitarian development being reframed, but also with AI coming in. And actually what we did is with a friend of mine, yeah, with a management buyout and a management buy-in, but we created a new company basically called Human Planet. And we launched this jointly, where we basically operate between the for-profit and non-for-profit space. So my partner, Christian, has been working 15 years in the non-for-profit space, yeah, with NGOs. I come over a decade in impact investing. Yeah, and we thought there's something to jointly shape rather than letting this die. So we relaunched it. And then also at the same time, Stephen, we had to flip it on AI because the way it was operating was loss-making. So we took over loss-making business, yeah, with 5 offices in great places: Brussels, Paris, London, Nairobi, and Mumbai. Yeah, with employees sitting there looking and waiting idle to get more work to be done. And now of course, you have AI coming in and where you need to basically flip the pyramid. Yeah, because a lot of catering what youngsters come in, which is the problem now for young people, actually, you don't have the entry-level job. Yeah, where you have a pyramid of an army of, junior people managing data, getting information, collating them and adjusting them so that the partners at the senior level can basically say, okay, here we can innovate and that's tailoring to clients. This is no longer the case. So basically flip the entire company on AI, back-end automated, yeah, end-to-end, which basically helped us to cut the costs down 5 times. Significantly more efficient. This increased the margin, increased also possibility on pricing. The flexibility also, you couldn't use in the past, you could use only, let's say, projects of a certain size and volume to be profitable. Smaller ones and smaller organizations were falling through the cracks. And all of that we can cater now as we embrace technology. But this is really where you have the traditional donor landscape changing for NGOs, and they're pointing towards more sustainable ways into innovative finance. That's where we sit. And you have the corporate world and investor world also looking how to reach underserved markets, areas where normally they couldn't cater to. And so this is where we sit in between. So the work we do, we work with corporates, we work with institutional investors, we work with INGOs and multilaterals. Yeah, and really seen both sides. And then we design all sorts of different products to mobilize capital. Yeah, this can be impact. Let's say it can be impact linked finance. It can be results based finance. The impact bonds, again, it's not floating bonds, but again, the development impact bonds, we've done over 20 of those. Blended finance, where you adjust, take non-for-profit. So you see that you have different shades of gray in an area where traditionally were two silos and is absolutely needed. And then, of course, the underlying path of AI coming in with great benefits, but also great collateral damage in terms of traditionally run companies.
So can you, I mean, I'm sure some of the projects or many of them could be sort of private, or can you list almost like a case study some of the projects that you're working on?
Yes, again, for example, we're working with some two US founders. Yeah, they're basically trying to get catalytic capital in, which is the difficult part. It's concessionary capital, risky capital, not for profit in a normal way. And so basically, we're helping them to design an evergreen catalytic revolving structure where you raise $100 million, you invest it downstream, risky investments, first loss investments for other funds and projects throughout the world. The reals come in, but it's not a fund which has LPs and the money goes back. So the team acts like an asset manager, even though it's not quote unquote asset management. Yeah, because it would be like a donor advised fund idea, but it's really meant to stay evergreen, revolving, and catalytic to basically $100 million translate into $1 billion, attracting private capital, more and more commercial capital to these projects. So this is one part. But you can see, though, it's a non-for-profit organization going into investment space to attract money. That's one, for example. Another example would be we just closed this financing refugees, so displaced people, so Syrian refugees in a Lebanese refugee camp. And you have educated people, you have just stuck there. They had to leave because of the war home, but they need financing for their own productivity. And you have sometimes huge, refugee camps, which it's a city in itself. And that's where we basically got from IKEA Foundation, their corporate side, then a Nordics non-for-profit, even the USDFC, they basically provide money. We did the design and we worked with an NGO in Lebanon on the ground to deliver loans. And again, it's less micro credits. It's a little bit more because it's intention to on the really productive side. That's a little bit goes up towards missing middle finance, but to fund and finance these. And after 5 years, it's done. The money goes back, and we had a 4-year, 4% annual return of that vehicle. So you can see in a setting where normally no investor would invest, yeah, we create possibilities to fund and to invest on the ground in also fragile environments. So those are of many pieces. So sometimes with a corporate, for example, we have done also corporate impact bonds. For example, there was one with Sanofi in the past, or we recently worked with Boehringer Ingelheim on the pharma side, tapping into underserved areas through an impact bond, social impact bond. Yeah, so you can basically take the different theories of change, how you want to use money to trigger change, a lot on economic empowerment. It's not the philanthropy idea of a poverty uplift. It's really to enable. And those are the things which we are very excited about. But it's a special world to understand metrics from the financial world and understanding how NGOs work on the ground, and now to bring these together in order to have more scalable solutions. And so therefore, a grant is not just a one-off. It actually stays much longer, and it can actually attract more for-profit money to double down.
So if you were doing an ask during this interview right now for Human Planet, what kind of partners are you looking for? What kind of NGO partners? What kind of projects are you looking for? What kind of capital are you looking for? Who are the people in the audience who will say, "Wow, that's exactly what I'm looking for"?
Okay, that's let's say, if I would see today anyone who's involved in an NGO who's suffering because ODA money is going down and the donor landscape changes, we can provide solutions to help them to use their skill set on the ground to point towards investable solutions and structures. So the income for those NGOs is a different way financially compared to a just pure donation. So those are the NGOs in any part of the world with anything they do. We work with them and we have solutions. That's on the non-for-profit side, going towards impact investing. On the corporate side, any corporation which can look at it from a CSR perspective, from a corporate foundation perspective, but also from a strategic angle of underserved markets. That's where we can provide solutions to support things. And that can be FMCG companies in the food security, financing smallholder farmers, yeah, directly with the off-taker, so their solutions. At the end, it's strategic. Can be also whether this is technology companies on rare earth and rare minerals, when they come out of different mines, and this is of course necessary, but you have people living around, a population around, which very often is also then the labor, So there are solutions where you can basically have a positive loop, which goes back to productivity, to the livelihood of the people, in terms of ethically working things. That's also another solution when you go to these corporations. And then you might think an investor. Yeah. When an investor wants to diversify investments, yeah, you can still stay on the same, which is equity, or debt. Debt, that doesn't change. The asset classes are the same. But you can look at a landscape where you are actually able to invest components. For example, very often investors also do some philanthropy. You can use the philanthropy to de-risk their main core investments on the financial return, yeah, which are all possibilities to think out the box on innovative finance and have investments going where they normally wouldn't go. And then at the same time, also increasing the profitability for the organization itself.
So that's a big bucket, right? So if an NGO wants to work with you, most NGOs don't have capital to finance your participation, so it must be some kind of a split of some sort, right? Sharing or...
Yes, indeed. Again, as we are now because we are lean in the organization, we are able to cater to smaller NGOs. In the past, it was impossible. It was an INGO, big budget, they have enough for us to get paid to do our work.
Right.
And now we're actually able to go smaller. We have an acceleration program, for example, where we take between social enterprises and NGOs, 4 in the spring and 4 in autumn, which go through a 4 months acceleration program, standardized one, very efficient on the cost side to help them on either donor diversification or on impact investing and fundraising side. Now, you need to understand, we are not regulated financially. We don't take success fees. We are an advisor to. So therefore, the question you place, some of the organizations don't have the money to pay us. So what we typically do is we provide them with a proposal for a NGO to say, okay, I take this, go to one of my donors and saying, would you be able to give a donation, sponsor the work for us we want to do with Human Planet,
right,
to help us, to increase and the donor diversification. So that very often happens where we basically tailor it this way. And then these organizations talk to the donors. As it's very clear the value proposition and what we want to do and what the outcomes are, it's not very hard to get a specific, grant just for that work with the results afterwards.
So in your donor base, there's tens of thousands of family offices. Actually, it's in the millions, right? Family offices out there. Are you tapping into then the broader sort of family office and ecosystem that's out there to act as a base who are looking at taking their capital and moving it into a way where you have this sort of flywheel capability where it's sustainable, you can measure impact and things like that?
Yes, we work with the family offices and also with private wealth. Yeah, absolutely. And it can go three ways. Very often it is the design and structure of impact investing, the impact investing measurement. Those are the things where we can cater to also develop the pipeline for families to invest. Yeah, in which way we then attach, we can get involved, we can adjust it our size. That's one typical side. We have created bespoke vehicles and designs. It's an SPV, it's a managed account, it might be a fund, depending on the size. Yeah, to really design that and also then get organization involved on the ground wherever necessary. So this is where it's a beautiful way because the ecosystem goes in different ways, between the ones having the money, the ones providing solutions on the ground, and then to structure it in a way where it makes sense from a financial perspective to do. So, but again, the short answer is yes. And where we are really good at is actually on innovative solutions because each case is different. Yeah, we look at the elements, and very often also when we do consortiums, with someone on the ground, someone having the money, and someone maybe in a specific expertise in a specific sector. This is where it becomes really self-fulfilling and a great job to do.
So you mentioned Christian as a partner, right? Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Can you
Yes.
are you able to just kind of describe your partner's background in a little bit more detail, or you prefer not?
No, absolutely. And Christian is an amazing person. Christian Meyer runs an organization himself since 15 years called MZN International, which is basically his last letters of the last name, Meyer Sunatrop. Yeah. But again, he was big corporate finance. He's an accountant itself. Yeah. Then he went into NGO as a CFO for a big NGO. Save the Children, I think was its time. And then basically he decided to create his own consulting firm, very small initially, to work with NGOs and to help them. And he's been doing this for 15 years. But he's been knocking at my door for some years already, saying, Florian, that I do philanthropy, but there's this impact investing. Can we do something in impact investing? So it was a perfect moment when I was trying to reinvigorate or save or readjust Koi's advisory business. Yeah. And he said, why don't we do something together? And that is then the nascent part of Human Planet. So his background is really understanding financial mechanisms within the NGO world, donor diversification, strategic outreach, and these things. Yeah, I'm doing this very successful. And I come from the impact investing space, and that gives Human Planet a very special place today of a value proposition because he understands the NGO language, I understand the financial language, and this is where we can match things.
I see. So, and anytime you have a partner, it's a marriage. So, so
It somewhat is.
right. So, okay. So over the past 20 years, you've mobilized like $1 billion in capital towards purpose-driven enterprises, working at these sort of the intersection of finance strategy and systemic impact. And you have so many use cases of that, including with the UN and even within the YPO community and more. But beyond Human Planet now, you're also co-founder and board member of several organizations supporting founders and leaders teams. Can you talk about some of those?
Yeah, the thing is, again, so some work we've been doing is on coastal resilience, yeah, which is really using blue, green, gray solutions, yeah, for climate adaptation for people living on the coast. Yeah, and there's right now we're working on some of the projects in the Caribbean. That's with a subset and different team members. Yeah, then we've also tried to, let's say, democratize impact investing in the sense in the energy specific transition. That has resulted into another one. So I like to, you know me, like to kick off things, not for me then to own and run necessarily, yeah, but just to inspire people and to actually do something, and trigger change in a positive way. So those are the things. And then again, even if you look at the some of the boards I sit in some of the companies, like for example, Goodwall, yeah. But the founders, the two co-founders, but one is YPO, and I've been sitting on the board of Goodwall now for 3 years. Yeah, and it's amazing conversation. It's an amazing platform with over 3 million people. It basically is upskilling of Gen Zers throughout the world on a platform, and it's funded and financed and supported by Fortune 500 companies. Yeah, and it really is, for example, AI literacy and climate change. It's really amazing to see how you can use technology, and trigger change. So it's basically a TikTok meets LinkedIn trips of experience for these people, but then it's really an upskilling of content for free, yeah, for people around the world to increase their livelihood, their economic empowerment, and their productivity, which is really amazing. That's one of the platforms on a more EdTech marketing community platform. It's difficult to describe, but it's a very clear, measurable outcome. That's another one I'm involved. And then I do some more non-for-profit work, yeah, which is really, for example, I sit on an organization called For Africa. For Africa is the biggest humanitarian and development, African-grown humanitarian development organization. Yeah, with really in 8 countries and 3,000 people. It's significant, the work. And also now we're looking from there, supporting the For Africa social enterprises, because with the work on the ground, that's what with the CEO, Isaac Pretorius, I was discussing that because I had my challenge saying, don't give a person a fish, don't teach a person how to fish, investing in fishing business, saying you need to look at economic empowerment, not poverty uplift. And he challenged this. He said, hold a second, this has to be a continuum of care. You sometimes have to give a fish because otherwise people would die. Then you have to teach how to fish, yeah, in order to, the educational side also, yeah, for people to sustain themselves, and then to invest in the fisheries and the fishing business. And so this is where some of the work is very meaningful, and the organization does an amazing job, really throughout Africa, because you can see Africa as the one where you need to want to lift people out of poverty. But I would rather say you can see Africa as the youth continent with a huge underserved markets for the next years to grow and to provide. So I see it more as a glass half full rather than glass half empty opportunity.
Do you still work with Bbox at all, or?
No, that had moved on, and Bebox was also a longer journey, really amazing journey. Yes, but again, when I exited, Bamboo to Palladium, it sat there, and so it
Right.
was naturally something I would uh, roll off, yeah, and continue to do, yeah. But yes, again, the founder of Bbox is also founder of Minex, yeah, with Mansour, and he does also some amazing work throughout Africa with his other company, Minex.
Do
So
you work with
that's another one. Yes,
James Mwangi at all, or?
no,
Okay. Um, Maybe interesting. Anyways, he's sort of like the global chair of the equity holdings, right? Equity group. So now you're still very active in YPO, the Young Presidents Organization, though I think they've dropped that sort of definition, because I would say maybe half of your membership is older than 50, right? Or close to it, or something like that. And you co-founded the Planet Action Network, which you mentioned, and co-founded the North Star chapter. You're also chair of Tiger 21 in Switzerland. And you launched a healthcare foundation in Mexico serving, marginalized, underserved population in rural areas. Can you give us an update in terms of your colleagues that you worked with within YPO, and then segue from there into Tiger 21, because the audience may not realize who Tiger 21 is, and then maybe a little bit about your healthcare foundation Mexico, and then we'll get into your books. And right, because we want people to adopt your books, right? So okay, so a continuation of the sort of the YPO, impact journey, and then Tiger 21 and in your healthcare foundation.
Yeah, the Healthcare Foundation, actually, that's years back. I'm no longer involved. I have to create this one. This was in 2000. So it's
Oh,
25
wow.
years ago. Yeah.
Right.
But again, I had a lot of learnings there. And this was an outcome from CSR at its time. I
Mhm.
was basically responsible for Latin America and running some of their subsidiaries of a healthcare group. And then you do CSR, and as that to create a foundation for continuous medical education. And through that, I had a lot of learning. Uh, Within that, also patient association, these things. But also my learning was that helping is not necessarily fair from a dignity point of view. Yeah, because nobody wants to be helped. Nobody wants to be
Right.
pitied at. Yeah, if you serve, as you initially said, Stephen, this is very different because you put yourself on the same level. If it's helping, you
Mhm.
put yourself higher than someone else. And that's an experience I had in Mexico where, we were serving through giving instrumentation and materials to a program to serve people uh, in the jungle, marginated, indigenous communities, but then they pulled out and go in and out. And then I happened to witness, not directly, but a surgery which later on was made on a child, which later on died. And it struck me. So you cannot just go there, help and leave. Yeah, this is unfair and from a dignity point of view. And that changed for me the mindset, even for the future, even when learning about impact investing. Oh, how impact investing is capital as a force for good. That is what I really, if we would have invested there in healthcare delivery rather than just going and leaving, this child would not have died. And so for me, that is the trigger, something I really learned and adjusted for my life. So that was at its time when I was still in healthcare, yeah, some decades ago. Now, um, the question on YPO, because at that time also I joined YPO. Yeah. And YPO is a great organization because when you lead an organization on top, you're pretty much alone. Yeah. And yes, you have your team, but your team depends on you. Yeah. And this is where YPO helps in a structured way that you have an exchange with peers also leading other organizations. Yeah. And also in a structured way, in a safe way, you have these forums where you can share anything and everything. And it's very personal and you grow as a person. I learned that vulnerability is a strength. I learned also to be honest to myself and let down the guard helps me to grow as a person. And that translates also on the professional side. So there are many things over the years in YPO. But as you said, typically YPO is up to 49. Then you become YPO Gold. Yeah, YPO Gold. Yeah. And so your relevance in the organization might be less because you're not necessarily leading an organization. You might have moved on. Yeah, and this is where Tiger 21 is different because Tiger 21 is only people, and you have several YPO members who have become Tiger 21 members. Yeah, or as I'm in chairs, YPO members to become a chair, which is an organization basically where you have ultra high net worth. Yeah, you have people who do not necessarily care so much now about running a company, but really what to do with the patrimony, with the wealth, where to invest. And it's not only the wealth preservation and wealth increase, but it's also the meaning of wealth. Because a lot of the people do either a lot of philanthropy or they're asking themselves from a purpose perspective, okay, I've been successful monetary wise. I've sold my business. 85% of Tiger members are first time wealth. And then there's a question, what do I do with my life? And that where it becomes very interesting to have these discussions. So there's a similar way like YPO, but the group of people looks at different things, yeah, amongst peers. And that makes it very interesting because you have a member sharing all its assets to a group, fully confidential, non-solicitation, and you get basically a personal advisory board. Yeah, and that helps you to navigate your situation in a healthier way. So it's for me, it's kind of a sequence. You might have entrepreneurs organization, which is for younger entrepreneurs and a smaller organization, 2 million in revenue. Then they qualify to be YPO, which is 20 million plus in revenue. Yeah. And then if they've done well, there's Tiger 21, kind of a next evolution for people to do. So I got approached by Tiger to set up another group in Switzerland, which I was happy to do. because intellectually it's the dynamic of another conversation around assets. What do I do with? What does it mean for me? Because the number is just a number, whether you have 50 million or 500 million, it doesn't really change. What changes is what does it mean for you? What it means for you and your family, you and your situation, and what makes life worthwhile. Those are the things which are interesting within Tiger 21.
I mean, you did co-found the Planet Action Network, and that whole sort of system has evolved. And there's the North Star chapter, which is really a global chapter. But there's also the Global Impact Report. Is that work continuing on the Global Impact Report?
I hope so. Again, in YPO, you do certain things and then you hand it over. Yeah.
Right.
You don't want to sit there through and get attached. This is really, and so I've done it 1, 2, 3. Yeah. I think they should be on the 4th one. And now it's a little bit difficult. Yeah. Again, because yes, it's continuing. Yes, the meaning is there, but geopolitically, specifically in the US, it's labeled. ESG is bad, DEI is bad. So yeah, it doesn't really, and it wasn't meant to be politics. It was meant to see how can you use business as a force for good. So companies
Right.
are still doing this, and it's mainly private companies, by the way, in YPO. So you don't have to judge to justify anything. Public companies are very different, but that makes the dynamic a little bit more challenging, yeah, because people
Yeah,
kind
for
of
sure.
have their heads now in different situations, and then
Right.
there's this huge AI wave,
Right.
where actually a lot of companies have to adjust now to a new reality quickly coming up, which sets sometimes the sustainability agenda a little bit on the back end.
So now let's talk about your marvelous books, right? On Vacation, How to Align Your Purpose with Your Profession, by Routledge and so on. And where is that going? And why should people adopt this book?
Yeah, Stephen, the thing is, originally the whole thing happened. So if I go back, yeah, at the age of 33, I had success my parents wanted me. I was running a company. That's when I joined YPO, by the way. And I was running a company, having a family and a home. And then I did a coaching in the corporate life still, yeah, inspired by my boss, said, Florian, you are high potential. You want to maybe fine tune certain skill set. Here's a coaching. Okay, I do the coaching. In the coaching was really a psychotherapy. It's called coaching, yeah, because you're not sick. Yeah, psychotherapy in the US is very different, but you have a stigma in European side. But I said, like, fine. So I got confronted in that session to my inner child and my outer adult protector. And that changed my awareness of things. And then I asked myself, hold a second, how much do I actually know about myself? And then I figured out that I have been the absent subject of my own education. My education gives me the tool to make a living, but doesn't tell me who I am and what is a fulfilled life actually mean. Because society says fame and fortune is success. But you have to recognize that fame and fortune only nurtures your ego. And when the fame and fortune phase is over, you see there's a lot with sports people or with great artists, or actors that come into depression afterwards. Because as long as is your fame and fortune is nurtured, the ego, you feel well, but afterwards you say, what now? Because it's based on fantasy. It's based on achieving something. We're running after something. And even if we achieve it, it might not be fulfilled. And if you listen to people at their deathbed, you might even cite Steve Jobs. Yeah, what they regret is not having lived and loved enough. Too busy on fame and fortune. So that is what I recognized. And so therefore the difficult part for me was to say, okay, if I decide on my life, especially when I'm younger, I should base myself on intuition, which is I am and I want to do, not I look outside fame and fortune because I want to be and appear. It's a big difference, and it's a decision to be made. So once I had this, Stephen, I basically did not know who I am. I just figured out my education didn't tell me anything about me. That's when I started to do personal development courses. I left the big corporate world. I went to do a roller coaster life. I personal development methodologies. And over the years, with my skill set and things, I ended up doing impact investing, which was triggered through an event in the jungle in Mexico. And then people were coming to me saying, Florian, you do impact. How can I do impact? And I asked them, what's your vocation? And generally say, I don't know. Then I said, maybe you do this and this and this, and we do a little bit of conversation exercise, and maybe you discover your inner child, and suddenly you have something bubbling up, which is inside out, not outside in, not opportunistically. And so the result of that, people get it, and then different phases to help them to make their profession, their vocation, their profession. That's what I call vocating. Yeah, you vocate when you dedicate yourself professionally to your vocation. And you can see that even sometimes you might be a doctor. If you're a doctor because it's great in society to be a doctor and you make good money, most likely this will not fulfill you. You have to have a vocation to be a doctor. Yeah. So those are things basically where if we would be trained early on to differentiate, we would probably make different decisions, more educated decisions, catering to our inner child also as much to the outer part. And so over having done that with many people, over 150 people, to help them to trigger an understanding, the awareness of the inner child, the awareness of how to contribute to the world, but still using the skill set and the power you've learned. You might be good in finance, you might be good in marketing, you might be good in different things, you might be doctors, these things. Then you can combine them, and it's very powerful because you're in your zone. Yeah, because what you do is greater than you, and you're not feeding your ego. Yes, we all have our ego, and we have to temper our ego. And our ego also is a good thing because we all want to make a difference in the world. And so these people then said, Florian, this works well. Can you write it down? I said, what do you mean writing it down? Yeah, can you write a book? Because one thing is you do this for the free time for people. The other thing to write a book. So I did this alone. I reached out to the editor of choice, Routledge, which is the biggest, publishing house for academic and teaching books. I did not know anyone. I just went there. I went in a similar way, Stephen, like I did with you. I went on LinkedIn and said, hello, my name is Florian. Yes. And I have a question.
Right.
So I did the same with Routledge. And then 6 months later, 3 proofreadings, my book got published. Now, my book has 3 books at the end. And Stephen, you know my story. Because this first book is Leadership as a Force for Good. Young people in the 20s. Yeah. Second is Business as a Force for Good. So I just finished the second book, it's How to Align Purpose with Your Organization. And then the last one will be based on capital. So capital as a force for good. But what has happened, Stephen, in the interim is kind of amazing because I wrote the book. I have my 5 kids, all Gen Zers. They helped me to design the cover page, but they didn't read my book. And then I said, okay, if youngsters do not read books, then I need to gamify the 7 steps. Yeah, kind of a Duolingo for people to vocate. And as I was doing and talking about that, I saw within the last 12 months the effect of AI. And if you understand what AI does, it's basically, it's another industrial revolution like 100 years ago. It will put mankind into understanding how to live with it. And it's massive. If you ask the World Economic Forum, just published a report saying 500 million people will lose their job because of efficiency out, because knowledge no longer is an asset, because AI will cater for it. Yeah, so this changes everything so that some people will lose their job. Other people, the youngsters, will no longer come out of university, college, nicely educated, and I get my job at McKinsey, as an entry-level job. All of that has changed. And so with this, people have to think differently. And this is where I got really concerned, because me as a Gen X person, I was educated the way we used to. Right? You get a good education, then you get a good job, and then you make your way. But if we do this in AI, everybody will ask the machine what to do, where to go. So you subjugate yourself to the machine. You're no longer leveraging the machine. But the beauty of AI is you can innovate, create, design much faster, much cheaper, and much higher quality because the threshold is going to lower with AI, but only if you know what you want. And this is where something I'm now thinking through as I'm gamifying the 7 steps is actually this tool will provide humans agency to decide first what they want, and then they leverage the technology rather than asking the technology for help because they don't know what they should do, what their profession should be, where they should live, and where can they earn the most amount of money. And that's where I'm really, really concerned, Stephen, in today's world. So and I guess I'm preaching to the choir because you started AI for Good, the godfather of the AI for Good summit here in Geneva at ITU. Yeah, and there's a whole discussion. But for me, it's now not just the good or bad, it is the role of the human in an AI world. And how can the human benefit itself versus just getting exposed to? So that's a little bit where things are going empirically step by step, which originally was done my own suffering, then inspiring some people to do a similar pivot. Now the book, now technology, and we are now in an AI age. So I want to move very quickly here.
Yeah, I mean, you're distilling your experience into this 7-step framework to help individuals integrate purpose, profession, and systemic impact. But now you realize the catalytic aspect of the integration of AI and really AI serving us and not we serving AI. So and then in that way you can build a meaningful career aligned with global challenges and personal values. And you've actually embraced AI, and it's interesting at Edge um, that there's this overall theme of aspect of the impact of AI, right? I mean, I can't go into detail, but um, I mean, it was a big subject of conversation and quite a change from prior years, right? Just a change in mindset. People now realizing that this is pretty big, right? And so you're embracing that, and that's interesting. And it's because you have these children, and they're saying, "Dad, look at you're getting this um, alpha generation, but also Gen Z kind of aspect to it." We're at our last part. I just want to make a few comments and then ask a closing question, but. I just want the audience to know that you're definitely a passionate musician, and in different YPO events, you've actually played your guitar and wrote songs and things like that. You're a former paratrooper, which is so keep in mind that's like special forces in a way, including the American Wings. You're fluent in 5 languages, so you're definitely a Renaissance phenomenal person, right? German, English, Spanish, French, and Italian. A devoted husband, father of 5, which you've already mentioned. And in younger years, you were an international judo champion, part of the German national team, U21, and then competed as well. So, so just a marvelous background. And of course, you work with Tiger 21, and there's YPO and things like that as well. And you've got this Human Planet um, new venture where you're integrating all this aspects of capital leadership and so on to really help the world and create value across people, planet, and prosperity. So and so all of those things have really become and converged. So the last question is, what sort of recommendations you want to leave the audience? And I'll add my bit. You got to, of course, adopt your books and support Human Planet, who have capital out there, or corporations out there, or NGOs are looking for the master of leadership and integration, value creation. You got to go to Florian and Human Planet. I'm sure there's some kind of a form you can fill to say I'm interested in working with you, something like that. But what is the final sort of message you want to leave the audience? And it could be a question and a recommendation.
So my comment is really specifically, in the past, we were educated that a calling, a vocation you had is this hobby thing, but first you need to get a real job. And that has changed fundamentally with AI. And this is where I invite everyone to go inside, to go back when you were a child of 5 or 10 years, to look at the dreams you had at this time, and you take these dreams forward in today's world. Because you're now in a situation where you can innovate fast, cheap, and efficiently. So maybe you had an idea in the past when you were younger, or also talking to younger people, you might think, yeah, I have this idea, but that doesn't really work, which was 99.9% the case of human beings. You had an idea, but it doesn't make sense. I don't know where to go. It's way too expensive. Now you have the tools. So my big invitation is for people to look at the huge opportunity, take some crazy ideas, and play around with technology, because you might actually come up with the next most important thing to support the world. And that is the part which is an awareness to grasp. And so this basically message to people: take a crazy idea, play around with the technology, and you might come up with something really amazing.
Well, that's a great recommendation. And, Florian, it's just been such a terrific journey with you from September 7th, something like that, in 2017, when you reached out and said, we have Pascal and he has the YPO 3.0. Right. And then we met, I think it was February the following year in Geneva, and you met Chaseb and Reinhardt and things like that, the team that the host of AI for Good, and then that whole journey started. Oh, my journey started with you. So it's been an interesting journey with you. It's like 6 years now, right? So, or no, 8 years, 8 years, so, or yeah.
So, Stephen, we might, and this invitation to you, we might celebrate our 10 years of friendship and of joint collaboration to change and to instill change in the world. Because if the math is right, 2017, 2027,
That's right.
that's next year.
10 years.
Yes. So maybe we find a great opportunity to celebrate that, and maybe do get something out at this time. Yeah, maybe at the World Economic Forum next year. Maybe a little later on Global Business Summit or something like that. I'm just sending the signal out there to the universe. Maybe the universe conspires again, because I don't believe in that things happen just out of nothing. I believe there's a greater reason why you and I have met close to 10 years ago. And I'm looking forward to another 10 years to double down further.
Yeah, and actually, and I've been saying this, we're going to live forever now, or you have the option to live forever, right? Because there's all of this de-aging technology that's converging. So we could be contemporaries for a lifetime, including with our children. So Florian, thank you for coming in and sharing your wisdom with our audience. And again, just marvelous the work you're doing. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me, Stephen. It is always a pleasure, and I'm very grateful to you, have you part of my next book being published this year, later this year, and but people will know more about it. I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.